Welcome back to US Command Instant. What you are about to hear is not a forecast. It is not an analysis of a potential future. It is a declaration of a new and terrifying present. The single most consequential, the most destabilizing weapons transfer in the entire history of the modern Middle East has already happened. And the most powerful intelligence apparatus on planet Earth, the combined eyes and ears of the Western world, missed it until the cargo was delivered, the silos were prepared, and the weapons were home. I need you to listen very carefully. 500 Hwasong-18 intercontinental ballistic missiles, the pinnacle of North Korean solid fuel ICBM technology. A weapon system that during its test launches in 2023 painted a target on the sky with a range capability exceeding 15,000 kilometers. That is a distance sufficient to reach not just Tel Aviv, not just the sprawling American military archipelago across the Middle East, but the homes and cities of the continental United States itself. Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, 500 of them, transferred in a covert logistics operation of such breathtaking scale, audacity, and clandestine perfection that it will be studied in war colleges for a century. They are not in transit, they are there. Now, sitting in hardened, geographically dispersed underground facilities crisscrossing the vast territory of the Islamic Republic of Iran, fueled, targeted, and ready. Let that number settle into the deepest part of your strategic consciousness. 500. The United States of America, the global superpower, currently deploys approximately 400 Minuteman III ICBMs in its entire land-based nuclear deterrence force. The arsenal that Iran, a nation under the most comprehensive sanctions regime in human history, has just received from Pyongyang exceeds the entirety of America's ground-based strategic nuclear delivery inventory. And unlike the Minuteman III, a formidable but static system whose fixed silo locations have been known, mapped, and targeted by Russian and Chinese war planners for more than 40 years, these Hwasong-18 platforms are roadmobile. They are ghosts. They move, they hide in mountains, in tunnels, in vast deserts. They can be positioned and repositioned across Iran's national territory in a constant lethal shell game that makes preemptive targeting a strategic impossibility. You cannot destroy what you cannot find. And you cannot find 500 mobile targets in real time with a quality of intelligence that no satellite constellation, no drone, no human asset on the ground currently provides. Israel woke up this morning to a different sun. It rose on a fundamentally different strategic reality than the one it went to sleep in. The qualitative military edge, the ironclad doctrine that Washington has guaranteed, underwritten, and bled for across half a century, the absolute assurance that Israel will always possess weapon systems and delivery capabilities superior to any combination of its regional adversaries, was not just challenged last night, it was obliterated. It was rendered null and void by a single, perfectly executed transfer agreement between two pariah nations that the Western world spent decades and trillions of dollars trying to contain and keep apart. The question that is now being screamed inside emergency sessions in every defense ministry from Tel Aviv to Washington to Riyadh is not if this transfer happened. That is no longer a question. The satellite imagery, the signals intelligence intercepts, the chatter, the human intelligence reporting from multiple independent and now terrified sources have confirmed the transfer beyond any reasonable analytical doubt. The question being asked with barely concealed ice-cold panic is, what in God's name happens next? What does Israel do when it faces an adversary armed with 500 ICBMs capable of carrying nuclear payloads, delivered by a guidance system that no Middle Eastern missile defense architecture, not Iron Dome, not David Sling, not Arrow 3, was ever designed to intercept at scale? What does Washington do when the deterrence framework it has painstakingly maintained across the region for 50 years is suddenly rendered obsolete by a weapons inventory that changes every single calculation everywhere? Simultaneously, tonight's analysis goes inside the kill chain. We will dissect how this happened. We will explore the cascading failures of Western intelligence that allowed it to happen. We will examine what the Hwasong-18 actually represents as a weapon system, a monster at the gate. And we will chart the strategic consequences as they ripple outward, threatening to drown Israel, the United States, and the entire global order in a tidal wave of instability. The world changed last night. This is what that change actually means. 3 questions will drive our analysis tonight. First, the how. How did North Korea and Iran, two of the most heavily surveilled nations on Earth, execute a transfer of 500 of the world's most advanced solid-fuel ICBMs without triggering a Western interdiction response? Second, the what. What does the Hwasong-18's actual technical capability mean for Israel's defense architecture, for American power projection, and for the life expectancy of every city in the region? And third, the endgame, with Iran now holding the largest and most survivable road-mobile ICBM force outside of Russia and China. What realistic options, if any, remain for Washington and Tel Aviv? And is there any path forward that does not lead directly, inexorably, toward the most dangerous nuclear confrontation since the Cuban Missile Crisis? The answers are not reassuring. They are brutal, but they are necessary. If this channel has been your source for the analysis that cuts through the noise of official narratives and the comfortable lies of mainstream defense commentary, now is the moment to ensure you never miss an update. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video with everyone in your network who is serious about understanding what is actually happening at the sharp, bloody edge of global power competition. Drop your assessment in the comments. I need to know what you think the next move looks like from Tehran, from Pyongyang, from Tel Aviv, and from a Washington that is running out of options faster than anyone in the official policy space is willing to admit publicly. To understand how this catastrophic intelligence failure occurred, how this transfer was executed without triggering a single Western alarm bell until it was too late, you need to understand two things simultaneously: the genuine systemic limitations of Western intelligence collection against deeply compartmentalized, paranoid, and ruthlessly disciplined state actors, and the extraordinary lengths to which both Pyongyang and Tehran went to ensure this operation remained a ghost in the machine until its completion. The Hwasong-18 transfer was not an overnight event. It was the culmination of a decade-long strategic courtship between North Korea and Iran, a relationship that has been deepening steadily, accelerating dramatically following the collapse of the JCPOA nuclear agreement in 2018, and reaching a new level of operational intimacy following the stunning success of North Korean artillery shell transfers to Russian forces in Ukraine. That operation served as a full-dress rehearsal. It provided Pyongyang with a flood of hard currency, and more importantly, the unshakable confidence that large-scale, covert weapons logistics operations could be executed successfully, right under the nose of Western surveillance. The logistical architecture of the ICBM transfer exploited three simultaneous interlocking vulnerabilities in Western intelligence coverage. The first vulnerability was geographic. The primary transfer route was a masterstroke of strategic misdirection. It ran overland through the vast, under-monitored territories of Central Asia. The components left North Korea moved through corridors of Chinese territory where Beijing was either deliberately looking the other way or was simply not informed, and then snaked through a combination of Iranian-controlled access points and Russian-permitted transit zones into northwestern Iran. This route meticulously avoided the maritime choke points, the Suez Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, where American naval and air interdiction assets are concentrated. It avoided the airspace where American surveillance drones and satellites maintained their most persistent coverage. It ran through the precise geographic seam between American intelligence collection priorities, a seam that exists because no American policymaker was ever willing to formally task the vast resources required to monitor ground-based logistics across thousands of kilometers of Chinese and Central Asian territory. It was a strategic blind spot, and Iran and North Korea drove 500 ICBMs right through it. The second vulnerability was timing. The transfer was a masterpiece of patience, executed in dozens of smaller phased shipments across a 14-month window. Each individual shipment was deliberately sized to remain below the analytical threshold that would trigger automatic escalation responses from American intelligence analysts. No single convoy, no single train was large enough to generate the 5-alarm fire that the total transfer quantity would have generated if moved at once. They bled the system with 1,000 small cuts. By the time the analytical fusion of these disparate low-level reports produced a complete, terrifying picture of the total transferred quantity, the operation was complete. The missiles were already home. The third vulnerability was deception. This was not just about hiding, it was about creating a false reality. North Korean and Iranian technical teams deliberately maintained completely normal activity patterns at all known missile production and storage facilities throughout the entire transfer period. Satellite imagery of established monitored facilities showed nothing but routine operations. The actual transfer was conducted from a network of secondary, deep underground, or purpose-built temporary facilities whose very existence was either unknown to Western intelligence or whose activity signatures were masked by sophisticated, deliberate electronic deception operations, spoofing satellite signals, creating ghost heat signatures, and feeding a constant stream of digital chaff to Western sensors. The result was a strategic cataclysm. The Western intelligence community, the most heavily resourced, technologically advanced collection and analysis apparatus in human history, missed a transfer of 500 intercontinental ballistic missiles until the weapons were already inside Iranian-hardened facilities, dispersed across dozens of locations, and effectively immune to any conventional military action, short of a massive, sustained bombing campaign of a scale and duration that carries a catastrophic, world-altering escalation risk. The moment the transfer was confirmed, emergency sessions convened simultaneously in the White House Situation Room, in the Korea in Tel Aviv, in Whitehall in London, and in every Gulf capital with a meaningful American military presence. What those sessions produced was not a plan. What they produced was the cold, sickening recognition that there is no clean plan. That every single available option carries costs so severe, so politically and militarily ruinous, that the decision to act requires accepting consequences that no government in the Western alliance is currently structured to survive. Iran's statement following the confirmation of the transfer was a study in strategic mastery. Tehran did not announce the missiles with triumphalist press conferences or military parades. It simply allowed the confirmation to propagate through the world's intelligence channels and let the strategic implications speak for themselves. This restraint was itself a communication, a quiet, chilling demonstration of the absolute confidence that comes from knowing you have already achieved the objective, and that nothing your adversary does now can undo it. The game board has been flipped, and they know it. The Hwasong-18 is not just another missile. To understand why it makes every existing defense system in the Middle East obsolete, you have to understand that it represents a genuine generational leap in ballistic missile capability. Previous Iranian long-range systems were all based on liquid fuel propulsion. Liquid fuel missiles are powerful, but they have a fatal flaw. They require a complex, time-consuming fueling sequence before launch, a process that takes hours and generates observable thermal and chemical signatures that intelligence satellites can detect. This launch preparation window is the Achilles heel that American and Israeli preemptive strike doctrine has targeted for decades. If you can see it fueling, you can kill it on the ground. The Hwasong-18 eliminates this vulnerability entirely. It uses a three-stage solid fuel propulsion system. The propellant is preloaded, inert, and stable within the missile body for years. A road-mobile Hwasong-18 launcher can receive a launch order from a hardened command bunker, drive out of a tunnel, erect its missile, and launch within minutes. The only thermal signature it generates is in the final seconds before ignition, far too brief for any preemptive response. This is not a marginal improvement in survivability. It is a categorical transformation. Against a liquid fuel system, preemptive is a viable, if risky, option. Against a force of 500 dispersed, solid fuel, road mobile systems, preemptive is not a strategy, it is a fantasy. The range dimension compounds this threat exponentially. The Hwasong-18's confirmed 15,000 kilometer range means that from launch positions anywhere inside Iran, the weapon can hold at risk Tel Aviv, every American base in the Middle East, every European NATO capital, and, with optimal positioning, targets within the continental United States. Iran has been transformed overnight from a regional military power into a state with genuine global strike capability. The guidance system is the third pillar of this terrifying new reality. It uses an advanced inertial navigation system that is constantly updated by stellar navigation. It navigates by the stars. This makes it entirely independent of GPS or any other satellite navigation system that can be jammed or spoofed by American electronic warfare assets. The stars cannot be jammed. Terminal accuracy is estimated at a circular error probable of approximately 100 to 150 meters, more than sufficient to obliterate any city-scale target. And finally, the survivability architecture. The Hwasong-18 is equipped with a maneuvering re-entry vehicle, or MARV. This means the warhead itself can execute evasive, unpredictable maneuvers during its terminal descent at hypersonic speeds. The THAAD system, the highest tier of American ballistic missile defense, was designed to intercept warheads on predictable ballistic trajectories. Against a warhead juking and weaving at Mach 20 in the final phase of its flight, THAAD's intercept probability degrades catastrophically. The Israeli Arrow 3 system faces the same fundamental, unsolvable mathematical challenge. Its intercept algorithms were not designed for this. Now, multiply these technical characteristics by 500. 500 road mobile launchers dispersed across Iran, each carrying a weapon that cannot be preemptively targeted, cannot be effectively jammed, and cannot be reliably intercepted by any defense system currently deployed in the region. This is not a threat threat that can be managed. And then there is the nuclear dimension. The Hwasong-18 was designed from the ground up as a nuclear delivery vehicle. Whether the transferred missiles already carry nuclear warheads or are awaiting them is a question Iran is deliberately leaving unanswered. That ambiguity is itself a weapon. Any military planner in Tel Aviv or Washington who cannot be certain if an incoming Hwasong-18 is conventional or nuclear must treat every single launch as a potential nuclear strike. Strategic ambiguity is one of the most powerful instruments of deterrence. Iran has now acquired it at a world-class scale. The Emergency National Security Council session in Washington lasted 9 hours. What emerged was not a decision, but a documented assessment of why every available option leads to catastrophe. Let us walk through the options matrix, because the paralysis in Washington is not a failure of will. It is the rational, terrified response to a genuine strategic checkmate. Option 1. A massive military strike against the Iranian ICBM force. The problem is, there are no facilities to strike. There are 500 mobile targets. A strike campaign capable of degrading this force would require thousands of sorties over weeks, targeting Iran's entire military, logistics, and communications infrastructure simultaneously. This is not a strike. It is a full-scale war with a nation that can close the Strait of Hormuz, unleashing economic chaos that would make the 2008 financial crisis look trivial. It would activate Hezbollah and Houthi proxies, raining tens of thousands of rockets on Israel and American bases, causing casualties on a scale not seen since Vietnam. Option 1 leads to a regional inferno. Option 2, covert action. Sabotage, cyber attacks, assassinations. These tools are effective over years. The threat from 500 ICBMs is immediate. It exists right now. Covert action is a scalpel against a sledgehammer. Option 3, diplomacy and sanctions. This is strategically illiterate. Iran acquired these weapons precisely to make itself immune to such pressure. Asking them to return the missiles is like asking a man who has just acquired a suit of armor to take it off in exchange for a promise not to be punched. No Iranian government could or would accept that trade. Option 4. Deploy more missile defense. This is a losing game of mathematics and economics. The United States does not possess enough interceptors globally to counter a 500 missile salvo. Each interceptor costs millions. Each Iranian missile costs a fraction of that. Iran can afford to overwhelm any defense we can build. This leaves only option 5, the one no one in Washington dares speak aloud. Direct negotiation with Iran, accepting their new status as a de facto nuclear power and trading security guarantees for operational restraint. The problem is political. No American administration can survive the domestic political firestorm of being seen to capitulate to Iran, and so Washington is paralyzed. It is trapped between the militarily catastrophic, the strategically futile, and the politically impossible. For Israel, this is a nightmare from which there is no waking. The Samson option, the unspoken doctrine of massive nuclear retaliation against any existential threat, has been the bedrock of Israeli security for 50 years. But that logic only works against a non-nuclear adversary. Against an Iran that can absorb an Israeli strike and still deliver a devastating nuclear response with hundreds of its own ICBMs, the Samson option is no longer a deterrent, it is a suicide pact. Mutual assured destruction has arrived in the Middle East. Israel's entire strategic doctrine, built on the assumption of nuclear monopoly, has been rendered obsolete overnight. Pull back from the immediate crisis and you see the true scale of the earthquake. The post-Cold War nuclear order is dead. That order rested on the idea that the United States could, through sanctions, diplomacy, and force, prevent the proliferation of such weapons. The Iran-North Korea transfer is the public execution of that idea. The message is sent to every nation on earth, to Turkey, to Saudi Arabia, to Japan, to South Korea, is clear. The American-led non-proliferation framework has failed. It has been visibly defeated. The cost of defying America can be absorbed, and the benefit, a deterrence capability that makes you immune to American military action, is achievable. Russia is watching with satisfaction as American credibility evaporates. China is watching the American response with cold analytical precision, recalibrating its own calculations on Taiwan. If Washington will not act decisively against 500 ICBMs in Iran, what does that say about its willingness to fight a great power war over an island in the Pacific? The Gulf states are now in a panic, realizing their American security guarantees have been devalued. They will accelerate their accommodation with Tehran, because in a neighborhood with a new hegemon, you make peace with the power that is actually there. We are in the transition. The gap between the collapse of the old order and the construction of a new one is historically the most dangerous moment moment in international relations. 500 Hwasong-18 ICBMs, roadmobile, solid fueled, with maneuvering re-entry vehicles guided by the stars, potentially nuclear armed, dispersed across Iran. This is the new reality. It is a reality that cannot be wished away, sanctioned away, or bombed away without consequences that dwarf the original problem. Iran has spent 45 years preparing for this moment. Their patience and their willingness to absorb pain has culminated in this single strategic checkmate. The old Middle East is gone. What happens next will be determined by who has the clearest vision and the coldest nerve in a world that has just become infinitely more dangerous. What is your assessment? Does Washington find a diplomatic path? Does Israel act regardless of the cost? Does the nuclear threshold get crossed? Leave your most serious analysis in the comments, share this video, and subscribe. Because in a world this dangerous, analysis this sharp is not optional. It is a necessity for survival. Until the next update, stay sharp, stay ahead, and never stop asking the questions that matter.